My name's Alex Carter. I'm 40, run a construction company here in North Carolina, and I've always prided myself on being a simple man with a strong work ethic. I build homes for a living, real ones with wood and nails and sweat. The kind you raise families in, put photos on the walls, argue in the kitchen, kiss in the hallway, grow old together on the porch. I built my own house with that same vision in mind, for me, my wife Amy, and the family we were building together. We've been married almost 5 years. She had 2 kids from her previous marriage, both good kids, teenagers now. Her son, Brandon, 17, keeps to himself mostly, and her daughter, Lily, just turned 15 and practically lives on her phone. Then there's our little one together, Rosie, 3 years old, full of curls and attitude. And now Amy's pregnant again, 6 months along. A baby boy. We'd picked out the name Jacob. You'd think this would be one of those golden stretches in life, where the struggle gives way to calm. But something's been off lately, and once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. Started small. Isn't that how it always goes? That night, the one that changed everything, wasn't supposed to be anything unusual. I just wrapped up a long day pouring concrete with the crew. The September air was cooling off, golden light bleeding through the trees as I pulled into our driveway. Our house looked peaceful, quiet, warm inside. I saw Amy moving in the kitchen window, stirring something on the stove. It looked like lasagna, one of her favorites. I walked through the front door, kicked off my boots, and made my way toward the kitchen. "Hey babe," she called without turning. "Dinner's almost ready." I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Not something I do every day, but she looked so peaceful, standing there in her pink maternity shirt. She leaned into me. I kissed the side of her neck, just below her ear. That's when I smelled it. Cologne. Not mine. Not anyone's I recognized. Strong, too sharp and woody, like one of those colognes you find in the glass case behind the counter at the mall. Expensive. Sophisticated. Definitely not the kind of scent that lingers from a random handshake or walking by someone. I pulled back slightly. She looked up at me with a warm smile, but I must have given something away in my expression, because her smile dipped just slightly. "What?" she asked, her voice a bit too casual. I shook my head, trying to keep it light. "Just, you smell like someone else." She raised an eyebrow. "Someone else?" "Yeah, cologne. Not mine." "Oh," she laughed. "Light, maybe too light." "Yeah, I probably brushed up against one of the guys at the office. You know how cramped it gets. Plus, I was helping Martin move some boxes. He wears too much cologne." Martin, her coworker. She'd mentioned him a few times. Said he was weird, quiet, a little too chatty sometimes. I'd never met the guy, but her answer was quick, too quick. Polished. "Huh?" I said, letting go of her, walking to the sink to wash my hands. "That explains it, then." She kept stirring the pot like nothing had happened, but the energy in the room shifted. It wasn't just the cologne. It was her tone. The way she anticipated the question, like she had the answer ready before I even asked. That night I couldn't sleep. She lay beside me, breathing slow and steady, one hand resting on her belly like she always did lately. I watched the ceiling fan spin above us in the dark. The rhythmic clicking of the blades matched the beating in my head. It wasn't just tonight. I started connecting dots I hadn't realized were forming a pattern. Over the last couple of months, Amy had been coming home later and later. Meetings, she'd say. Errands. Just needed some air. She started putting her phone on silent. Sometimes she'd leave it in another room altogether. Other times it was always face down on the table. She used to send me pictures from her day, random little texts. That had stopped. Our conversations turned into to-do lists, Rosie's dentist appointment, grocery runs, what to grab from Lowe's. And then there was that one afternoon a few weeks back. I'd left work early because of a rain delay. Decided to surprise Amy with lunch. I drove toward her office building, and that's when I saw her. Sitting in a car parked across the street, next to a man I didn't recognize. I didn't get a great look, but they were angled toward each other. Close. Too close. I slowed down, tried not to stare. Later, when I asked about it, She told me she had gotten a ride to lunch from one of the newer guys, and they were waiting on a mobile order. Said she didn't want to call me and bother me at work. I let it slide. Why? Because I wanted to believe her. Because the alternative meant something I wasn't ready to face. But after tonight, the scent, the way she dodged, the way she smiled through it all started to feel different. I didn't say anything right away. I'm not the yelling type. Never have been. I don't throw plates or punch walls. When something's wrong, I go quiet. I stew. I observe. I file things away. That night, I lay in the dark, eyes wide open, heart beating in my throat, and I started going over every strange moment from the past 3 months like they were exhibits in a courtroom. The new lingerie she bought 3 weeks ago that she never wore. The day she claimed her phone died, and she was unreachable for almost 4 hours. How she started locking her laptop when she walked away, even when she was just going to the bathroom. The sudden concern with privacy. The shift in routine. The evasive glances. I wasn't imagining it. Couldn't be. I looked over at her. My pregnant wife, sleeping peacefully, one hand on the life we created together, and felt something heavy twist in my stomach. What if it wasn't just a smell? What if that cologne was a footprint? A crack in the dam? What if this whole time she'd been walking the line between 2 lives, the one we built and the one she was building behind my back? I didn't want to believe it. God, I didn't. But something had shifted. I could feel it in my bones, like the way you feel rain coming in the air before a storm. That night, lying there in our bed, the truth hadn't fully come out yet. But something inside me knew. This was only the beginning. The next morning started like most others, which somehow made it worse. Amy was already up, fixing breakfast in the kitchen, humming some country tune I didn't recognize. Rosie sat at the table playing with her cereal, half asleep, little curls bouncing every time she shifted. Amy smiled when I walked in. "Morning, babe. You want coffee?" I nodded, forcing a tired smile. "Yeah, thanks." She poured me a cup and slid it across the counter like nothing had happened. Like the night before hadn't cracked something inside me wide open. I didn't say anything. I just took the mug and sat down across from Rosie, pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't. It wasn't even close. Later that day, when the crew broke for lunch, I sat in my truck with the engine idling and stared at my phone for a long time. Her name stared back at me in my contacts. Amy, the woman I married. The woman I was supposed to trust without question. I didn't call her. Instead, I opened my text messages and scrolled back. I looked at how our conversations had changed over time, from full of love, jokes, and pictures of Rosie to short reminders and one-word answers. Pick up milk. Rosie has a cough. Running late. That was the one that stood out. Running late. I saw it over and over again. That phrase had become a fixture in our life, and now I couldn't stop wondering what she was really doing during all that extra time away. I told myself I needed to calm down. I was probably overthinking it. Couples go through rough patches. Maybe it was hormones. Maybe it was work stress. Maybe it was just life piling up. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. I told the crew I had a family thing, which wasn't a lie. I needed to see something. Or maybe I just needed to not see something. I parked a block away from the house and walked up the street. Amy's car was in the driveway. I stood outside for a moment, just watching through the kitchen window. She was inside, on her phone, pacing back and forth. She wasn't smiling. She was nervous. I ducked behind the fence when she turned toward the window. I waited a few minutes before walking to the door like I just arrived. "Hey," I said, stepping in. She turned fast. Too fast. And fumbled her phone like she hadn't expected me. "Oh hey, you're home early." "Yeah." Finished up faster than I thought. She nodded, tucking her phone into her back pocket. "Rosie's napping. I was just catching up on some messages." "Work?" I asked. She hesitated for a half second. "Yeah, Martin's been a mess lately. I swear, sometimes I feel like I do 2 people's jobs." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, must be tough." I didn't push it. Not yet. The next morning, I waited until Amy took Lily to school before I checked her laptop. I wasn't proud of it. Felt wrong. But so did everything else lately. Her work bag was still by the dining table, and her laptop sat inside, charger still plugged in. The screen lit up, asking for a password. My first guess was Rosie's birthday. Wrong. Second guess, our anniversary. It unlocked. Part of me hoped I wouldn't find anything. That it would just be emails and spreadsheets and boring office chatter. That I could close the screen, feel ashamed for doubting her, and get on with my day. But that's not what happened. There was a folder on the desktop labeled Documents. I clicked it open, scrolled down. Nothing unusual at first. But then I saw it. Tucked between invoices and client forms was a file labeled Rental House Beach Property. I opened it. Inside was a list of dates, lease details, and a PDF of a rental agreement for a small house near Wilmington. The start date was just 2 weeks away. I scrolled further and found photos. Not just of the house, but of Amy. In a sundress, barefoot, standing in a shallow pool at night. Another of her holding a wine glass. Another, kissing someone on the cheek. A man I didn't recognize. His name was in the rental form, Mark Easton. The same name from a few messages I'd seen on her phone weeks ago when she left it unlocked by accident. I remembered seeing a Mark and asking who it was. She told me it was just a guy from work. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart hammering like a jackhammer in my chest. This wasn't an emotional affair. This wasn't her needing space. This was a second life. A second life she'd been building while carrying my child. I copied the photos and documents to a flash drive, closed the laptop, and put everything back like I found it. My hands were shaking. My vision was blurry. But I kept it together long enough to get out of the house and back into my truck. I drove aimlessly for hours. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay still. I ended up in a diner outside Raleigh, staring into a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. What was I supposed to do? Go home and pretend nothing happened? Keep smiling in front of the kids? Sleep next to her knowing she was already halfway out the door? Mentally, emotionally, physically? Couldn't. That night, I waited until the kids were asleep and asked her to sit down. "We need to talk," I said. Amy looked up from her phone, eyes narrowing. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched her face, the face I used to know like my own. "You've been distant," I said. "Different. For months." She said nothing. "You're always out late. Your phone's always on silent. You never talk to me anymore unless it's about groceries or bills. I've tried to ignore it, to give you space, but something's not right." She swallowed hard. "Alex." I leaned forward. "Are you seeing someone?" Her eyes darted away. "That's a yes," I said. "No," she said too quickly. "Of course not." "Then who's Mark Easton?" Silence. Her mouth opened, then shut again. Her face drained of color. I let the silence hang. I needed her to feel it. "He's no one," she said finally. I shook my head. "Don't do that. Don't insult me. I saw the pictures, Amy. I saw the messages. I know about the beach house. You've been planning to leave, haven't you?" She stared at the floor. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed. A bitter, broken sound. "Didn't mean for what to happen? Getting caught?" "No," she whispered. "I didn't mean to fall for him." The room went still. "I was lonely," she continued. "You were always working, always exhausted. I felt invisible. And then Mark just noticed me." I closed my eyes. It was like getting punched in the gut. "So you threw everything away?" "I didn't mean to," she cried, tears welling. I didn't know how to tell you. And then I got pregnant and I cut in. Are you even sure the baby's mine?" Her breath caught. That was all I needed to hear. I stood up, heart pounding. "We're getting a test." She nodded slowly. "Okay. I'm not doing this dance, Amy. I'm not fighting for someone who's already gone." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. That night, I slept on the couch. Not out of anger. But because the bed we shared wasn't ours anymore. It was just a place where the truth had been slowly dying in silence. The morning after our confrontation, the house felt like a bomb had gone off. Not physically, no yelling, no broken dishes, nothing thrown across the room. Just a silence so thick it hung in the air like dust. It was in the clinking of cereal bowls, the drag of chairs. Even Rosie, usually full of chatter, just looked back and forth between us, sensing something wasn't right. Amy barely looked at me. I didn't say much either. What was there to say? I left the house early and drove straight to the clinic. I didn't know the exact process for setting up a paternity test when the baby wasn't even born yet, but I knew I had to start somewhere. The woman at the front desk was polite but distant, like she'd seen this 100 times. Non-invasive prenatal paternity test, she said, typing into her system. We'll need a blood sample from the mother and a buccal swab from the alleged father. We send everything to the lab. Results take about a week. How accurate is it? 99.9%. I nodded. Set it up. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork. It wasn't even the possibility that the baby might not be mine. It was realizing I'd reached a point where I had to ask. That night, I told Amy we had an appointment. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just nodded and whispered, "Okay," then disappeared into the bedroom, shutting the door quietly behind her. Lily and Brandon started noticing the shift. Kids aren't stupid. They know tension. Brandon started staying out later with his friends, barely checking in. Lily kept her headphones on during dinner, eyes glued to her phone, barely speaking. Rosie asked me twice that week why Mommy was sad. I didn't have an answer. 3 days later, we sat side by side in the clinic waiting room, not speaking. The nurse called our names, led us into a cold, sterile room. Amy gave her blood. I did the swab. The nurse said thank you and we were free to go. We walked to the car in silence. Before I got in, Amy finally said something. "I know you hate me," she said softly. I looked at her, tired. "I don't hate you, Amy." "Then what do you feel?" I took a long breath. Like I'm waking up in someone else's life. We didn't talk the rest of the ride. The following days moved in slow motion. I kept going to work, kept running the crew, kept pouring driveways and framing walls like I hadn't just watched my marriage snap in half. But every night when I came home, I could feel it, the distance, the secrets, the betrayal clinging to the walls like cigarette smoke. I stayed on the couch. Didn't even think about going back upstairs. I couldn't sleep much anyway. I'd just lie there in the dark, trying not to picture Amy and Mark together. Laughing in a rental house, touching in the dark, whispering promises while I was at home packing lunches and paying bills. One night around 2 a.m., I got up to get water and caught a glimpse of Amy in the hallway. She was standing in front of Rosie's room, hand resting gently on the doorframe, eyes distant. When she saw me, she didn't speak, just turned and walked back into the master bedroom. I didn't follow. Then, a week to the day after the appointment, I got the call. The nurse's voice was clear and calm. "The results show with 99% probability that you are the biological father." I didn't respond for a second. "Mr. Carter?" "Yeah," I said finally. "Thanks." I hung up, stared out the windshield of my truck, and waited to feel something. Relief, anger, vindication, anything. But all I felt was tired. When I told Amy, she nodded once, looked away, and whispered, "I'm glad." But the damage had already been done. The betrayal wasn't about DNA. It wasn't about biology or bloodlines. It was about something deeper, the kind of betrayal that makes you question your own memory. Makes you rewind the last few years of your life and ask, how much of it was real? That night, I started gathering paperwork. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a scene. I just sat at the dining room table after the kids went to bed. Laptop open, documents piling up around me. Divorce forms, financial records, property deeds, photos, **TS. Everything I needed. Amy walked in at some point and saw what I was doing. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. I didn't look up. "What did you think would happen?" She didn't respond. I kept working. The next day, I met with a lawyer, a sharp woman named Valerie who didn't flinch when I told her what happened. She asked questions, took notes, and didn't waste time with sympathy. "You've got evidence, and the paternity test is clear," she said. "We'll push for a clean split. Custody arrangements for the baby can be added once he's born. In the meantime, we'll lock down assets." I nodded. "Do it." Valerie looked at me for a long moment. "You're handling this better than most men do. Not much choice, is there?" When I got home that evening, Amy was waiting for me in the kitchen. A manila envelope sat on the counter. "I went to see someone today," she said. "A counselor. I'm going to start therapy." I nodded. "That's good." "I'm not doing it to win you back," she added. I need to figure out how I got here. I need to fix myself before I ruin anything else." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I'd spent the last 2 months watching the woman I married become a stranger. So I just said, "Okay." Over the next few weeks, things shifted. The house went on the market. We met with mediators. We told the kids, or tried to. Lily broke down. Brandon didn't say much, but he didn't need to. He just walked out of the room and didn't come back for hours. Rosie asked if we were all going to live in the same house forever. Amy cried in the bathroom that night. I didn't follow her. Couldn't. Some nights I'd sit on the back porch after everyone went to bed, just staring out into the woods behind the house, asking myself how we got here, where things turned. If there was a moment I missed, a warning sign, a red flag, something I could have done differently. But the truth is, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes people leave even when you're giving them everything you've got. Sometimes they don't want steady. They want something else, and you don't get a say in that. One night, Amy left her phone on the coffee table. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't, but it buzzed, and I glanced down. A message from Mark. Just 3 words. "Did you tell him?" My stomach clenched. I picked it up and opened the thread. There wasn't much, just a few messages back and forth. Mostly her telling him it was over, that she was staying, that she'd made a mistake, that she was sorry. He hadn't replied much, just short responses. But that last message told me all I needed to know. She hadn't told him about the baby. She was still keeping pieces of her life hidden, even from him. Even now, I put the phone back where I found it. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. I was done digging. Whatever secrets she had left, they weren't mine to uncover anymore. By the time December rolled around, the house barely felt like a home anymore. Most of our pictures were packed away, our furniture listed online, and our smiles, the ones frozen in the frames we used to walk past every day, now felt like lies caught in amber. I'd stopped sleeping on the couch, but not because things had gotten better. I'd moved into the guest room instead. I couldn't look at the bed where Amy and I used to lie side by side and pretend everything was fine. That bed had turned into a grave, and I wasn't about to keep sleeping in it. Our divorce was moving fast. Valerie didn't waste time. The property was under contract, our accounts were being split, and I was already talking to a builder friend about buying some land and starting over. Rebuilding, that's the one thing I did know how to do. Amy tried to stay civil. She cooked dinner some nights, picked up groceries. She even asked how work was going once or twice, like small talk could glue the shattered pieces of our marriage back together. But I didn't give her much. Not anymore. I didn't have the energy to pretend she hadn't gutted me from the inside out. The test might have said the baby was mine, but that didn't change what she'd done. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something brutal. It wasn't just that she'd betrayed me. It's that she'd been ready to leave. She'd had plans, conversations, lease agreements, photos, a whole world growing behind my back. And if I hadn't caught the scent of another man's cologne on her shirt, who knows how much longer it would have gone on. She wasn't sorry for doing it. She was sorry for getting caught. A few days before Christmas, I was on the back porch drinking coffee when Brandon came out, hands shoved in his hoodie pocket. "Mom said you're moving out," he said. "Not exactly. We're selling the house. I'll be moving somewhere else." He nodded slowly. "She told me you were divorcing. I guess I figured. I looked at him. 17. Almost grown. Too old to sugarcoat things for. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he asked, was it your idea? I sipped my coffee, let the steam rise between us. She made choices, Brandon. I'm just living with them. He stared out into the woods. So, are we still gonna see you? That one hit harder than I expected. I wasn't his real dad, never tried to be. But I'd helped raise him since he was 12. I taught him how to use a drill, how to change a tire, how to speak up for himself when someone talked down to him. And now here we were, standing in the cold, acting like strangers. I hope so, I said. That's up to you and your sister. He nodded, jaw clenched. Then he turned and went back inside. I didn't blame him. This whole thing was like a grenade had gone off in the center of our family, and we were all just walking around, dazed, waiting to see who would start bleeding next. Later that evening, I found myself scrolling through photos on my phone. Not to torture myself, but because I needed to remember what it used to feel like. The early days, before the secrets, when we'd take road trips just to see leaves change colors, or spend lazy Sundays making pancakes with Rosie while she wore her princess apron. And there she was, Amy, smiling into the camera, hand resting on her belly. Taken the week we found out we were having a boy. I stared at that picture for a long time, not out of longing, out of confusion. How could the same person in that photo be the one who betrayed me so easily? That weekend, we hosted one last family dinner in the house. Something simple. For the kids. Amy said it might be good for closure. I didn't argue. Truth is, I wanted to mark the end. Make it real. We ate lasagna around the half-empty dining table. Rosie talked about Santa. Lily barely touched her food. Brandon didn't say much. After dinner, I was cleaning up when I saw Amy standing alone in the hallway, staring at the framed ultrasound on the wall. You still planning on being there when he's born? She asked without looking at me. I never said I wouldn't. She nodded. Good. Silence. Then she said, do you ever think about what we could have done differently? I laughed, but it didn't sound like laughter. You mean besides not cheating? I'm serious, Alex. So am I. She turned then, finally facing me. I wasn't happy. I felt like we stopped being partners. And your solution was to start a new life without me? I snapped. Behind my back? While I was breaking my back at work so you didn't have to worry about anything. Her eyes welled up. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible. And you don't understand what it's like to be lied to in your own home. She wiped her cheek. I didn't want it to end this way. Neither did I. I walked past her. I didn't owe her a therapy session. I'd given her everything. My time, my trust, my future. And she treated it like a backup plan. The final straw came a few nights later. I was taking out the trash when her phone buzzed on the counter. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the name caught my eye. Mark Easton. Again. This time I didn't hesitate. I opened the message. I miss you. You sure this is what you want? A few seconds later, another one came through. We can still go. That place is still ours if you change your mind. She hadn't replied yet. I stood there, the trash bag in my hand, heart pounding. I didn't feel betrayed anymore. I felt done. It wasn't just that she'd lied. It's that even after all this, the paternity test, the truth coming out, the divorce proceedings, she still hadn't shut the door. She still wanted both lives, the safe one and the secret one. I dropped the phone on the counter, walked upstairs, grabbed my go bag from the closet, and left. No yelling, no goodbye, just one more door closing. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town and paid for a week in cash. I sat on the bed, stared at the cracked ceiling tiles, and listened to the buzz of a flickering light outside my window. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not because I was okay, but because I finally stopped pretending I ever would be if I stayed. Motel ceilings have a way of making you think too much. I lay on that cheap spring mattress night after night, staring at water stains and wondering how long they'd been there. Were they old? Recent? Did anyone even notice? Or had they just learned to live with them, like I'd been doing with Amy? It was strange how fast you could fall out of a life. One day you're planning a nursery, the next you're eating microwaved burritos under flickering lights, Googling custody laws at 2 a.m. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. I was exhausted, hollow, like someone had wrung every last drop of fight out of me, and all that was left was the shell of a man who used to be sure of things. The next morning, I called Valerie and told her I'd moved out early. She said that might actually help, proof that I wasn't trying to stir conflict, just separate peacefully. "You still want to push for joint custody?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, I want to be there for my son." She paused. "Just so you know, the court will consider cohabitation history, stability, income. You have a strong case, and you're willing to raise a newborn." "Absolutely. I meant it. No hesitation. This baby didn't ask for any of this. He didn't ask to be born into chaos or to inherit a broken home before he'd even taken his first breath. That wasn't going to be his fault. I might have lost Amy, but I wasn't going to lose my son. Not if I had anything to say about it." Over the next few days, I found a temporary apartment, small, 1-bedroom, furnished. It overlooked a strip mall, but it had clean walls and working locks. Felt like mine. Quiet. Nobody lying in the next room. Nobody hiding text messages. Nobody pretending. I still saw the kids. Brandon stopped by once to grab some tools. Lily came over to bake cookies. Something we used to do when she was little. We didn't talk much about what had happened. I think they just appreciated that I didn't treat them any differently. One night, I got a text from Amy. "I'm having contractions. False alarm, I think. Just wanted you to know." I stared at the screen for a while before replying. "Keep me posted. I'll be there when it's time." Nothing else needed to be said. Days turned into weeks. Christmas came and went without fanfare. Rosie spent the holiday with Amy, and I dropped off presents early. A stuffed bear, some building blocks, a framed photo of the two of us from the fair last summer. She hugged me so tight it almost undid me. "Where's Mommy?" she asked, looking around my new apartment. "At home," I said gently. "Why can't you be at home too?" I crouched beside her. "Because sometimes grown-ups need different homes to be happy." She looked confused, but she didn't cry. She just nodded and went back to her coloring book. I envied her simplicity, her ability to accept without overthinking. I wished I could do the same. Mid-January, Amy called me. Her voice was flat, tired. "I think it's time." I grabbed my keys and was out the door in seconds. The drive felt like a dream. Stoplights blurring, roads blending together. When I got to the hospital, she was already in triage. I walked into the delivery room just as they were prepping her for the epidural. She didn't look at me right away. Just breathed deep, one hand on the rail, the other on her belly. When the nurse stepped out, she finally said, "Thank you for coming." I didn't respond. I just pulled up a chair and sat beside her. For the next 9 hours, I stayed. Held her hand during contractions. Got her ice chips. Rubbed her back when she cried out. It was automatic, the muscle memory of care, even if the emotion underneath it was shredded. At 2:14 a.m., Jacob Carter came into the world screaming and pink and furious. 7 pounds, 9 ounces. A full head of dark hair. They placed him in Amy's arms first. Then, when she looked at me and said, "Do you want to hold him?" I took him without a word. I looked down at his face, his tiny fingers curled into fists, his chest rising and falling like the world was brand new. And I felt something shift. I didn't think about Amy. I didn't think about betrayal or court documents or how broken everything had become. I just thought, I have a son. He's here. And he's mine. After a while, the nurse came in and took him for testing. Amy lay back on the bed, exhausted, eyes half closed. "I don't know if I deserve any of this," she said. I looked at her, really looked at her. She didn't look like the woman I'd married. She didn't look like the woman who had lied to me either. She just looked lost. I stood. "I'll check on him." She didn't stop me. Jacob spent 2 more days in the hospital for monitoring. I visited every day, stayed late, asked every nurse 100 questions. I brought him home with Amy when they discharged her. Not to the house, but to her new apartment. Smaller than ours, quieter. Rosie ran around excited while Amy tried to settle the baby in. She handed him to me before I left. "You're good with him," she said. "I'm his dad," I replied. She nodded. "I meant it when I said I'd never keep him from you." "See that you don't," I said calmly. She didn't argue. Over the next few weeks, we worked out a schedule. I took Jacob overnight once a week, watched him during the day on Saturdays, fed him, changed him, rocked him to sleep in a chair I bought secondhand and fixed up myself. I started keeping a journal, not for court, just for me. Notes about his feedings, his sleeping habits, his first smile. Proof that I was there, that I was present. A few people at work told me I was a good man for sticking around. I hated that. Being a father isn't heroic. It's a responsibility. You don't get extra credit for doing what you're supposed to do. Amy didn't reach out much outside of scheduling. She stopped trying to talk about us. I think she finally understood there wasn't an us anymore. Just two parents tied together by one small, beautiful reason. Sometimes I wondered if she missed Mark, or if he'd moved on the second things got complicated. She never brought him up again, and I never asked. I didn't care. The person I was now didn't need explanations. I just needed peace. One night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, holding Jacob against my chest. He was half asleep, his little body warm against mine, the city lights flickering below us. I thought about all the things I'd lost. Trust, marriage, a version of life I'd once believed in. But I also thought about everything I'd gained. Clarity, boundaries, and a reason to keep going. Amy had broken something in me. That was true. But she hadn't ended me. She hadn't taken away who I was, or the love I had to give. She just rerouted it, refocused it. And as I stood there under the stars, my son breathing against my chest, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It didn't come in a rush. Came slow, quiet, like healing always does.